All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. I hereby call this meeting to order of the Justice Project Oversight and Planning Committee meeting at 2:02 p.m. on January 16th, 2025.
Okay. Marty, would you like me to share screen?
I can do it. Here we go.
Great. Okay, why don't we move to the land acknowledgement?
Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events.
Thank you so much, Tasha. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you to our co-chairs for starting us up. My name is Holly O'Neill, and as you know, Marty and I are helping just provide the background support for this committee. And you all remember the Zoom logistics. And if people can remember to use the raise hand button, that will be helpful, and to use describe the full meaning when you use acronyms is always a great thing. Okay, next slide. Okay, here we are on the agenda. So Marty's going to give us a quick orientation to our 2025 action plan. And then we're going to do the follow-up on the committee's rules of procedure. And Barry, if you want to chime in on that, that would be awesome. And then I am so excited for today's session because we're going to get to hear from Kayla Erickson and from Hannah Sloan on the jail and behavioral care center design, and then the Making Changes pilot project. And we'll have time for Q&A for both of those. And then hopefully have enough time for some feedback on the jail inmate focus group questions, which are part of the process that we're using to gather input from people who are going to be most affected by this construction. So that's our plan for today. Again, thank you so much for being here, and let's keep moving it along. Marty, action plan.
Okay. As I think was mentioned in an email, we're going to show the action plan in each meeting packet and at every meeting just to keep us oriented on our plan so we all are following along and know where we've been and what's coming and anything that's changed in our plan. So you can see on here on this slide what we did last time. And that was really working on this action plan. And then this time, as Holly said, we're going to be, whoa. Well, what I have to do is not click. Sorry. So we're working on we're talking about the jail and behavioral care center design today. And at our next meeting, the top two items are grayed out. That is talking more about following up on the inmate input on the jail and behavioral care center design and planning for public engagement in jail behavioral care center design. And the reason those are grayed is because there are contracts in process right now for an owner's representative, that's called, position, and they will be doing a lot of work to create a community engagement process, and we need to be in sync with that, and we're not sure about the timing. So this is a maybe at this point for our next meeting, but we will be receiving the next report on progress on implementation plans and reviewing that. And we will be working with Village Reach, Julia, on the evaluation and performance measurement plan. And we'll keep you updated as the action plan kind of evolves and our plans for the next meeting evolve.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we had one small item left over on our rules of procedure. So, I appreciate everybody's patience on these first couple of meetings because we had to do all of that stuff to establish the committee because it's a new committee. And there was, so we got through our charter, our rules of procedure, and we pretty much have approved everything, but Barry had said he would follow up on this question of proxies. So Barry, go ahead, Marty, and do the next slide, please. And then Barry, do you want to just share what you found out?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
Okay, next slide, Marty.
So as you know, the JPOP is actually a subcommittee of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. So we are subject to the same things that were spelled out in the ordinance that created the task force to begin with. And one of the items in that ordinance was that the task force would be allowed to create their own rules of procedures for things like meetings and proxies and so on. So that was done in October of 2015. It's been amended a couple of times, but with regard to proxies and also representatives, or what we might call designees, somebody might want to have a designee that would have permanent voting rights for that organization because, for instance, Jason is here with us and he's from the mayor's office and he has been given that authority by the mayor. So that would be a designee. Proxy is just a one-time thing for one meeting. So anyway, the rules read, task force members are encouraged to designate proxies to attend and participate with full voting rights in any task force or committee meeting. So that's very clear. It applies to not only the task force meetings, but the subcommittee meetings as well. And then it goes on to say task force members may also request task force approval to assign a representative to permanently represent them with full voting rights on any subcommittee or the task force. So it's something that we want to know about, though. So if you're going to have a proxy, you should coordinate that with the group. Is Jill still our point person, Holly?
It's us. It's
Okay,
Holly.
so get that to Marty and Holly so they know when we convene a meeting who's eligible to vote during that meeting, as well as designees. If it's going to be permanent, they still need to know that so they can have that adjust the membership that they are aware of. So anyway, that's all I had.
Yay. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for doing that research. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, good. Then let's move on to our presentation from Caleb. I am so excited that we have Caleb here today to talk to us. We've been so curious about what's going on. And so Caleb, without any further ado, do you want to take it away?
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Almost said good morning. That's how my day's going. My name is Caleb Erickson. I'm the Chief Corrections Deputy with the Sheriff's Office. And I want to try and take a couple of minutes of your time to talk about correctional facility design and behavioral care center. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I am not new to this. We've been doing this for a number of years, but I still have issues every once in a while. So bear with me just a moment. Hey, look at that. I think we got it all connected. So, over the last, I would say 8 years, I have been going to various facilities, trying to gain wisdom on what, kind of national best practices might be, what other agencies are doing. I felt like relying on, what we've always done in our community isn't always the best recipe for success, especially if what we've always done hasn't been met with success. And so I visited Middlesex County, Massachusetts to look at a number of very interesting and groundbreaking programs that they had in place, specifically regarding substance use disorder treatment and other recovery systems that they have in place. And then we, in 2022, I believe, now the dates are running together in my head, went to Davidson County, Tennessee, to look at their facility specifically because of a facility that they call the Behavioral Care Center. And more to come on some of these concepts too, folks. So this is just a primer. We also visited Franklin County, Ohio, which is one of the most recent facilities built in the U.S. that also has reached a high level of acclaim because of the design techniques and practices that they use to put together a facility. And a number of the people who are on the call here today were also there. So, you know, they're here to keep me honest and make sure I'm not making mistakes here in the presentation. But we've also looked at facilities in our region as well. I didn't put an exhaustive list together, but the Manly Regional Justice Center in Kent, Snohomish County, Skagit, Lewis County, Kittitas, Franklin County, Washington, and Benton County, Washington, in addition to Marysville City Jail. So we've seen a number of facilities, and we've had opportunities to decide, you know, kind of what is important and what is really crucial for the sheriff's office, for the community. And there are kind of key elements that we figure are really important in this discussion. Safety and security is really kind of a foundational element for all carceral facilities. And so we kind of go back to that concept often. But as much as possible, we want to try and develop some efficiencies in operations to reduce the likelihood that it takes more staff to do the functions within the facility. And then we also looked into, again, national best practices have these concepts called trauma-informed design or biophilic elements in design. And while there isn't a like Webster's dictionary definition of either one of those two concepts that strictly applies to corrections, they can broadly be applied to say that the facility itself should not cause more harm just by the nature of its existence. And so reducing the impact that the facility has on an individual, be they incarcerated or staff, is a key and foundational element to this concept. Biophilic is really the idea of bringing in outdoors and nature inside and having a connectivity with the outdoors even while you're indoors. Sometimes that means to have wood tones or other natural beauty brought in. It also could mean having fresh air, simply. And we'll go potentially more into detail on some of these. It's a smattering. The slides are different, you know, text options, but I've got some pictures for those of you who have a harder time visualizing what I'm talking about without some pictures. So if you've seen the video from Franklin County, Ohio's virtual tour, some of these shots were directly taken from that virtual tour. I also have a presentation that I've taken some of these shots from. And then I think even one or two of them are shots that I took myself. But you can kind of get a look just in this photo that we're looking at here of the natural beauty. They've got a mural on the wall, which doesn't seem very big, but it's actually quite large in person. And having that, just that simple, you know, scenic view to look at imbues hope, and it helps you to engender a feeling of overall wellness for the people who are in the facility. One of the other key concepts that we would really like to see accomplished in a new facility is direct supervision. In this photo, the kind of middle section is where the deputy's desk would be, and that's their station. That's their workstation. They observe the activities within the unit. They control the flow. They help people get to and from where they need to go. So there's really a lot of benefit of having a staff member in the housing units. And so we feel that the direct supervision is the best model. Currently, both of our facilities are indirect supervision, so this represents a change. But this is something that we were hoping to accomplish. In addition to direct supervision, we're looking for a horizontal design. We really have come to hate elevators over the years, and just eliminating them from the facility would be really, really helpful. And so a mezzanine can be accomplished. This is just another photo of a unit in Franklin County that has a stairs to an upper mezzanine. All ADA access would happen on the first floor or on the regular floor, and then having additional housing up above, it increases your accessibility for some additional space, and it allows you to use more of that space in a meaningful way, but it doesn't take anything away from your ADA access. One of the things that you probably noticed in the video is they used an interesting kind of a netting that is atypical. I've never seen that before at a correctional facility, but it was an interesting approach to kind of reduce the trauma of having, an incarceration setting. One of the key areas, in addition to that, is having flexible space as much as possible. I'd like to be able to use whatever housing unit it is in many different ways for many different classifications. The more flexibility, the better. Having all of the services available to the individuals who are in custody is really important. And so that concept, we've sort of coined the phrase, or at least borrowed the phrase, bringing the services to the detainees instead of bringing the detainees to the services. In both of our facilities right now, if somebody needs to go to rec or to a visiting area, or to go to court or see the nurse, every item that you could mention in terms of function usually means that they have to come out of the housing unit where they're at, travel through some section of the facility, and end up somewhere else, and then reverse that process when that activity is complete. We found that across the nation, when people put all the services that they can, again, or in or adjacent to the housing unit, there's a lot more flexibility in the space, and it reduces staff time to do that movement or accomplish that movement. And it also increases the safety of the facility. So we're not having people just walking around in the facility as much. So things like laundry, medical care, recreation, library services, visitation, attorney access, court. We saw all of those things represented in Franklin County, and we would hope to duplicate that as much as possible in our own facility here. So this is a photo from the virtual tour as well. This is their mental health evaluation suite, which is again co-located with the unit. So they can have a nurse's sick call, they can have medication dispensing going on, they can do evaluations for mental health and physicals all in the same space. And having all of that access really increases the functionality of the space and reduces that movement and the travel. talking more specifically about trauma-informed design and biophilic elements. Each one of the housing units in Franklin County had what they call the Take 10 room. It was a room where if you were dysregulated in any way and you simply needed to get away, you could go in. It didn't have a lock, but it was intentionally calming. There was limited stimulation. You could go in and maybe sit with the lights out and just take 10. Literally, you could leave anytime you wanted. It wasn't mandatory, but it was just an option for you if you needed to feel more regulated. But generally speaking, if we wove into every aspect of the building, acoustic controls to reduce sound and other noise pollution. You don't realize potentially when you're working in an office environment or a bit more normative space, but there's a lot of noise pollution that goes on in a correctional facility, and it becomes part of the landscape if you're working in corrections, but you don't realize how much that impacts you. Really want to make sure that we have clear sight lines so we can see people. One of the photos from Franklin County has, you've got a lot of glass in the housing units, and that was intentional so that you could see really well. But again, natural light, wood tones, and specifically, I can't remember if I talked about this already, but on the virtual tour in their rec areas, they have roll-up doors that they can open as necessary to allow fresh air to come into the unit, which was really, really huge. When I'm talking to people who are incarcerated, I often hear that there's not a lot of things that you do when you're in custody that's normal. And so trying to find normal things, or at least inject as much normalcy as possible into the experience when you're in custody, really prepares people for going back into the community. And it also reduces the likelihood they're going to recidivate or come back to the facility. And so finding ways to create normalcy, right? What would we find about an carceral setting that is normal, right? And how can we improve that? And then as much as possible, we want to provide for autonomy. Daniel Pink, in his theory of motivation, recommends autonomy as one of the three drivers for motivation. So just the ability to have some control over what you're doing in your daily routines, even if it's something simple. And so providing for those options when folks are in custody is really important. We're going to look specifically at some of the features of Franklin County, and then we're going to look specifically at some of the features of Davidson County with some pictures. So this is one of the housing units that is used for, I can't remember if this is intake or one of their just general purpose housing units. They're very much the same, but I want to call a couple things into focus. So the medical area, kind of the center of our screen here, is really, really important to have in the unit. We do not have anything like this in our current setup. But just next to that, there's another small room, and then on the other side, there's a meeting room. So if you were an attorney or potentially coming in to teach something, you could have access to that. And then if you were standing where this photo is being taken, behind that area is virtual court and a large classroom. And then beyond the, I'm pointing like you could see it, beyond the deputy station is video visitation. There's a small alcove for laundry services. So as much as possible, they thought of as many things they could get into this space as possible. And then again, you've got the large mural, bringing those elements of the outdoors into the facility. The carpet. When I first saw the carpet, I'm like, oh my gosh, this has got to get terribly dirty. And they intentionally went out and tested a bunch of different carpet samples And this stuff is very, very durable, but it brings an element of normalcy into the facility. So, let's see. One of the other things that they talked about in the video that I think is really important to consider for us as well, is a focus on staff wellness. You know, one of the biggest challenges that I've had over the years, I've been in corrections. I think tomorrow is my 20th year anniversary. Mental health for the correction staff is a big problem. If you don't have correction staff who are balanced and making good decisions and in good space, then they're affecting the people who are in custody. And so we want to make sure that we're caring for our staff and providing space that has a focus on their wellness. So dedicated break spaces so that they can just take a few minutes to get away throughout the facility, secure parking at locker rooms, large lockers, sleeping quarters if they're a short turnaround between shifts, natural light, workout space. In Franklin County, they had really, really large locker rooms with large lockers and benches, and it was clean and warm and bright and inviting. They have these terraces on the outside, so you could get a little bit of a time outside, and then that was right next to their kitchen area where they had an indoor break space. And so you have a buffet line that you could go through and have some lunch or a meal and sit and relax, and then you could go in and out. It was really quite a nice space and enviable. They also had workout space right next to the locker room. So you could come in and out of the facility through a separate entrance if you were just to go coming in to work out. And then they had access to these spaces right next to the lockers. So really quite a good focus on the staff and the mental health for the staff. I don't remember if they had any, but I would recommend having similar to a Take 10 room where the detainees can use, but something like that for the staff in case of a high stress incident or they just need to decompress. A Take 10 style room would go a long way for our staff as well. And this is just another view of, I've got a handful of photos from various different perspectives from Franklin County. So you can kind of see different directions. So this is a little bit closer to the deputy station. We've got the medical office here, and then you can kind of see this alcove. This has got a little sink, a hot water dispenser so that you can make soups. And then right behind that is the washer and dryer. They've got a number of TVs throughout the space, and then there are some exercise equipment out in rec as well. This is before they actually put up a mural, so this is like during construction. So that there is going to be a mural in this kind of smooth wall space, but it was prior to that. This is a different area, and again, you can kind of see that sink and hot water dispenser, but this is a different unit. They just have a very similar look. This is a charging station for the tablets. So that if people want to have access to a tablet while they're in the facility, they can charge them there. And these are the visiting kiosks back here. And then there's a professional meeting space back in this area. And again, natural light throughout these large windows provided for natural light, and the mural as well. Really encouraging, and again, imbuing that source and generating that sense of hope. In the reception area, which is what you would call intake or booking in a correctional environment, they intentionally made space just for plants. There's a little, I can't remember what you call it, but that room doesn't lead to anything. It's just outside and it's just got plants, and you could sit and look at the plants while you're waiting to get processed or waiting for someone to come pick you up in the reception area. And so really an encouraging use of the space, again, natural light, just watching, to be able to see natural beauty right there, rather than sitting in a dark dungeon-like setting. They really intentionally kept it bright. One of the things that they highlighted on the virtual tour is that Major Thompson and his team recognized that a woman's path to incarceration is often different than a man's, and sometimes it's including violence, and the way that we handle incarceration for female detainees needs to understand and be informed by the typical path to incarceration. So they actually developed a space. It's part of their intake area and the reception area, but it's outside of the view of any of the male detainees where they do all of their searches, so that you're not continuing to include some form of trauma for the females who are incarcerated. And then they also made some very intentional design choices when it came to the female housing units. These are all female housing units. You will note that there's a lot of wood and wood tones. The natural light, of course, and some of the other elements were there. But all of the services that would be available for a male housed in the space are also available to the female population. It's important for us in our community to make sure that we have services available to everybody. And so it was really an important thing to see for the Franklin County folks to stay focused on that. So regardless of what facilities, we saw a lot of facilities at Davidson County as well. There was this moment where we were working on reentry. They were focused on trying to build some form of skill, culinary skills for people who are working in the kitchen, educations from Google or other online education services that will help them to learn coding or programming, other vocational training, trying to give people a sense that, there is a purpose, and simply just staying in custody and doing nothing didn't have to be the only way. And, that's one of Daniel Pink's additional elements for motivation was purpose as well. So, encouraging that autonomy and purpose were really important for those facilities that we were at. We saw, and I think one of the things that we would like to see in our new facility is a centralized kitchen where we're providing, meals to each of the floors or each of the housing units. We currently serve meals out of the downtown facility for the work center and juvenile detention. And so having the ability to teach people how to have a training space, people can leave the facility with, at the bare minimum, a food handler's permit, and then potentially other certifications. And we feel like that's a very important goal for our new facility. And then we're going to look at Davidson County, which again was in Tennessee. I did mention that this is Nashville. Franklin County is Columbus, and people probably don't have another reference. So Franklin County, Ohio is Columbus. Davidson County, Tennessee is Nashville. So the behavioral care center, which we're about to look at some photos of, really catches the eye, especially when you walk into the building. It really is a stark change from other incarcerated facilities. But it is a voluntary program for folks who have, some form of mental health diagnosis, and it is a mental health decision to allow somebody into the program and allow somebody to graduate. But it is really a diversion, a prosecutorial diversion for people who have low-level felonies or misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, and they can, through the process of going through the steps in the Behavioral Care Center, the BCC, I'll probably say BCC to just keep things shorter, they can eliminate their criminal offense. And so it is a truly intended to be a complete diversion from prosecution. So it was a really interesting idea. And again, we're going to look at some photos. One of the things that they intended for it to be was sort of a left turn, an arbitrary left turn, but a left turn at booking, saying, hey, this person has committed this crime, but we're going to take a left and go to the BCC instead of to booking. In practicality, that in their circumstance, it didn't work out as well as they were hoping. There may be room for that to happen in our neck of the woods. I like to think that's possible, but we need to make sure that we are working with the prosecutor to make sure that whatever we're doing is appropriate for our community. In their facility, they had, as you can see, tons of natural light. I mean, this dormer or the skylight area was virtually the whole ceiling. It had a huge impact on the amount of natural light that was coming in. You can see the doors around the room. Most of them are going to kind of an apartment-like atmosphere, beds, and sleeping areas, excuse me, but they are wood doors, atypical of a correctional environment. And I've got another perspective here in a couple of slides, but you've got even just to the furniture, atypical of a corrections environment. Carpet, again, unusual. Their building, although connected, had a completely separate entrance for people who were coming in to the BCC from the street. So really giving the sense that, hey, this is a separate space. Co-location is important, meaning that you should be on the same campus because you want to be able to get services to people right away, and you won't have to wait for a long time at a rest. But they really did a good job of making sure that the facility was right next to the downtown detention center, but without being the only way to get in. This is the same room, but a different look or a different perspective. So there's a outdoor kind of space here, and then a conference room. And then I believe this space over in the back corner was more housing. And then tucked in to our left from this perspective is their multi-purpose space where they had, I think they had a yoga instructor when we were there. They were actually growing plants in here as a method of just, learning how to grow things. And it was kind of an interesting, again, way outside of the norm for an incarcerated setting for me. Looking to, again, more normative behavior. Sitting in a chair like this, far more normative than sitting in some plastic chair that you would get in an incarcerated setting. So having some place to sit that's comfortable, having the autonomy to say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Hey, I need to go out and just be on the patio for a little bit, what have you, just having the ability to have some autonomy. They were very re-entry focused. So everybody in the program had to have next steps. So once I'm no longer here, I've got this place to live or this job lined up, or these are my next steps. And so in order to progress through the program, they had a lot of connectivity with the community, making sure that they had safe places to land and warm handoffs. Okay, I think that is largely it. Obviously, I'm entertaining questions. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm sure some of you will ask me a question and I'll think of it, but let me stop sharing for just a moment and see you all again.
Great. Thank you, Caleb. That was awesome. Yeah, let's take questions. Go ahead, Stark.
Yeah, Caleb, can you talk a little bit about the facility in Columbus where people exited the jail and what was available to them upon release?
Yeah, excellent point. Thank you, Stark, for that. So they had what they called a rapid resource center, and it literally was right at the exit of their facility. They couldn't build it right away when they first put the place up, but they added it very shortly thereafter. And what it was is Major Thompson kept saying, you know, you don't ride the rides at the theme park without going through the gift shop at the exit. And so they had a space where you could get resources rapidly. I know, pun intended on this one, but you could get socks and underwear or other clothing items. You could get a cup of coffee. The vast majority of people just needed to charge a cell phone because it'd been sitting for some period of time. So a place to plug in a cell phone. And then going a step further, it was a connection point for people in the community who are providing services to people who are getting released. And that could have been anything from Department of Corrections, attorneys, heck, the librarian. There were so many different potential options in terms of using the meeting space. And it wasn't a terribly large area, but it was 2 floors and they had access to different meeting spaces, a little kitchenette. And it was really, really encouraging. And again, I forgot to include it, so thank you for bringing that up, Stark, but it is definitely something that we would like to see replicated in our area if possible.
Hey, Caleb, didn't they even have a housing element to their exit strategy?
Yeah. Yep.
Mary Lou, I see your hand, and let me take, if I can, the other. Is it a follow-up on these questions, or can I go ahead with the lineup? Can you wait? I'm going to put you third. So we've got Tasha, then Scott, then Mary Lou. Go ahead, Tasha.
You had mentioned in your talk about reduction in recidivism based on these things. Did they start or did they do a study of some sort showing a difference? And if so, do we have a copy of that showing what metrics they use so that we could, study those?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to have to get in touch with them and see if they've got any data. They looked at a lot of different places when they built their facility. So they literally packed up and traveled all over the country. So Sheriff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I would just add that I think it's going to take them several years to really have that data, Tasha. But I will tell you that also embedded in Tennessee at that particular facility was a social service unit. So, and I'm sure Hannah might talk about that later, but right now we're actually contracting out and we're pulling from this area and that area, and they actually have that embedded as full-time employees at that facility. But I do think it's going to take several years for them to really get that data going.
Oh, I didn't know how long these facilities have been open, if they've been open for a while or these are just in the last year or so.
Yeah, and Caleb can correct me, but I think Tennessee opened in 2023.
I think it was late 2022, but yeah, it wasn't open very long when we got there.
Thanks,
And Ohio opened in 23 as well.
So it sounds like even if we don't have the numbers from the results of these facilities, they probably, based a lot of these design changes or design features based on what they had learned from other studies. So yeah, Caleb, I think Tasha's question is great. So anything we can find on kind of anticipated results would be super. Okay, Scott, and then Mary Lou, and then Dean. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Caleb, great presentation. Really appreciate all the research you've done and made it very digestible. I'm curious for you guys, how will initiatives like, the direct supervision and some of these other things we're talking about impact your staffing levels and the need for additional staffing? Obviously we're talking a lot about the build of the facility, but how did they ramp up for that? Did it take more staffing to accomplish some of these initiatives that they're looking at in just basically off the design?
Yeah, it's a good question. So direct supervision, as Scott points out, does take more staffing than indirect supervision. But it is a decision that the sheriff and the executive team need to make. And we feel it's an important one. Again, these are things that we wish for or we hope for. They're not guarantees, but this is what we're aiming towards. And we feel that direct supervision is the best model for the safest operating facility in this day and age. I don't know exactly how many it's going to take more because it really depends on the actual design of the facility. Since we haven't put pen to paper on the actual designs, we don't know, is it 5 more, is it 10 more, or what have you, but we don't know. And it is constantly an issue to try and find more staff. So if you know folks who are interested in working in our facility, send them our way.
That was kind of my thought as we're looking at these things, once we make some of these decisions or it's finalized, that we get ahead of your staffing needs, because I know it takes us a long time to train and it's going to take you guys a long time to train. So really marching that out will make a difference. You guys have what you need. Yeah,
fully agree. It will take us time to kind of get our arms wrapped around staffing, and as soon as we know what that staffing need is, we would advocate for a ramp up to get to that staffing level.
Great, thank you. Mary Lou.
I just want to say, having gone through the Bellingham jail 10 years ago when I first got on council, this is unbelievable to see the difference between these two visions. The one thing I'll never forget being in that jail was the closing of the doors, that horrible sound as the gates come crashing together, and that must be very jarring for anybody inside. But I wonder again, with how open everything is, with people wandering around, have they had any concerns about safety, either from incarcerated people versus incarcerated people, or incarcerated people versus the staff, with this kind of openness? And finally, I would just like to know, what are the rates of recidivism? Because when they're training people, simple things like making a meal, I can't help but think that that's going to really add to people's ability to adjust once they get outside.
Yeah, no, and you're right on, and I'll speak to that last point first. Just being able to do your laundry. What if you don't even know how to do laundry? And the first place you're doing your own laundry is in an incarcerated setting. We're teaching you how to do that and do it correctly. Sometimes it's the little things, it's the intangible things that you're doing inside a facility that really does make a difference long term. It's making sure you're getting healthy food and making sure you are eating on a schedule and having some form of routine. And again, learning some of these things that may or may not be applicable to the outside, but certainly the habits and a bit more of the autonomy does help. And I lost track of some of your questions, Mary Lou. Did I answer everything?
Again, the safety, has there been an issue given the openness and the intermingling of the people in jail versus the staff? Has that been an issue?
Yeah, they just started using the facility when we got there in Franklin County. So I don't know for sure. this wasn't representative of every single housing unit. They had, sort of maximum security facility areas that were much more restrictive in their housing. And so they didn't have people housed in those areas, but the one place that we went in and interacted the most with the people who are in custody, every single one of them was in custody for a very serious felony. And we sat in with them and had conversations and went through their morning meeting. And I don't know about everybody else, but I was pretty comfortable in there, as comfortable as I could be. So there are disadvantages to the safety of the people in custody when you are not in the unit, not in direct supervision. You could potentially say that there's an advantage to a staff safety, but it's a trade-off. Having people in the room when people are interacting, I think, does actually help maintain some semblance of order. People are less likely to get in fights and other things like that. And that has, not just here, but that's been going on in a lot of different places. Snohomish County, King County, they all have direct supervision facilities, and that evidence is weighed out.
Thank you. Great. Okay, we've got Dean and then Miriam. Go ahead, Dean.
Caleb, in the Tennessee Behavioral Care Center, was it their intention to also offer substance use disorder treatment for people coming in with addiction or abuse issues?
I don't believe so. The nature of their program was they wanted it to be about 30 days or less. And the average length of stay at that point was about 10 days. So I don't think so. I don't know that you're getting meaningful work done on that front in less than 30 days. It's possible, but I don't remember that standing out as this is obviously a portion of their program. It is something that they were doing in Franklin County, but not in the BCC and Davidson County.
Thanks. Miriam?
Hey, Caleb. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so I was wondering about in kind of your gathering of data and information on people who have designed jails differently, if you're also thinking of looking at other places who've done it for longer, so therefore have more data on the impact it can have on staff and inmates. So the question is that something you'll all be looking at as well?
Yeah. So the hard part is there are some, I don't want to say fashion because it doesn't seem like the right word, but there's almost fads in jail design. Like you can go, oh, this is a jail that was built in the early 80s, standing in a facility. There's some themes that kind of run through places. And so we haven't seen a large number of facilities year to date that have all of these complex design features. Direct supervision, not new, right? We could say direct supervision is a proven model, and we're getting information from the National Institute of Corrections that it is the safest way to handle things. But some of these more cutting edge stuff, they're not widely represented. Now, it's not the end of our journey. We're going to continue to go to look at facilities and say, hey, what can we learn from this space? What can we learn from this space? And continue to try and find examples where people are doing good work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I have another question too, because I want to follow up after the meeting. Holly and Marty, I'll send you an email, and just like with some things I've been thinking about. And then, so I know that we're getting lots of information around design. I was wondering if we'll also be getting information about the services provided in the new jail beyond incarceration. Because I know that in your research, like if that's something that came up outside of cooking or doing laundry, but like like purposeful activities for incarcerated people.
Yeah, for today's discussion, I don't want to I don't want to say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. I'll be careful about selling
Okay.
too much.
Okay.
I know from my perspective and from the sheriff's perspective, we're very interested in bringing in services from the community that already exists that we can evenly make connections inside the facility. There are things that we're learning about almost on a daily basis. I learned about something yesterday that I was like, that's a cool idea. We need to be thinking about that. So that being said, I mean, we are thinking about vocational things, right? So how can we help bring, say, Bellingham Technical College into the facility to lower the playing or level the playing field so that we can get some technical certification while we're in custody. And David is teaching, high school completion and then potentially more on that aspect. So education, vocational training, and then services. There's a lot of different options in terms of social services and behavioral health services that I think would be important to include. I just don't want to say, this is what we're planning on doing and then not be totally correct. Sheriff, I see you mute a couple times. I don't want to walk over you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add that, it's also important to engage different trade unions and because we have a lot of them here and they're very interested. And in fact, they already, many of them already have programs for people that are incarcerated. So that's certainly one thing that we want to look at. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam, for bringing that up. So let's like be flagging things like this for future conversations here at the JPOP, right? Things we'd like to hear more about and dig into more deeply. So we're, let's stick that on the list. So we've got 3 more hands up, and then we still have another presentation. So we want to transition pretty soon to listening to Hannah. But if there are things that you all have questions about or more ideas about after this session, just email them to Marty, okay? And we'll start collecting things. So Hannah, you're up.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple things based on some questions that I've heard. Hopefully the services question, Miriam, that you have will be a little bit answered after my presentation and at least see kind of the hopes that we have for the future and what we're trying to do so far. And then a couple of things about direct supervision with what people were asking about. Obviously, like Caleb said, it helps with safety because they're right in there with the inmates, and then it also helps with building relationships and seeing the humanity in each side of things. So having the inmates really understand and appreciate the corrections officers, and then vice versa, the corrections officers seeing the inmates as more human, and just having that regular connection with them beyond just like a safety screening or something. You're with them all day long. You're going to have better relationships, and that's going to lead to better care, which is really awesome. And then the staffing needs, I wanted to add like just a reminder that the staffing needs may seem to increase based on direct supervision, but the way that the design is hopefully gonna come to be is going to help offset that because we have the services being brought to them. So there's a lot of staff time right now spent just transporting people. And so that's a few different staff every day that could be placed into those units providing direct supervision instead of just providing transport. So I'm hopeful that it will help offset some of those staffing needs.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Stephen?
Caleb, the last statistics I saw came from a year ago when we were passing the initiative, and I think at least 50% of the people who were in the jail at that time were categorized as having a serious mental illness, and even more than that with the substance use disorder problem. And so I was struck when you talked about the Nashville BCC being intended for a maximum of 30 days and an average in practice of 10 days. Those are not serious acute conditions, it sounds to me. So there's got to be somewhere else where we're putting somewhat, I'll say, risky or decompensated people, and they probably don't look like those nice open spaces you were showing, or else there are other issues involved there. I'm trying to get a handle on the severity of the people incarcerated in our jail, at least in recent history, with some of these design concepts. And I'm trying to figure out how you handle both.
Yeah, so you're right. There are other spaces in both facilities, both in Columbus, Ohio, and in Davidson County, that were for people who were in various stages of distress or decompensated. I don't have great pictures of the actual space, but they essentially have cells and day rooms and access to recreation and all of the other services. My view, this is just the world according to Caleb. So my view is that we should be able to accomplish as much as possible with people who, regardless of their classification, regardless of their need, if we make the space flexible enough, that it could meet a wide variety of classifications. And so I would advocate that whether you're in one particular crisis or another, you're still going to benefit from natural light. You're still going to benefit from all of those trauma-informed elements. And so as much as we can, if we can weave those into the fabric of the building, it can't help but increase the likelihood that people are going to at least not be harmed more by their incarceration. So, spaces where people are housed by themselves, those exist in those housing units. Spaces where they simply don't get along with other people, they had them in there. I didn't point them out specifically, but there are single cells in there and there are quad cells in there. So, but we want to try to help people feel more normal in the space. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right. Stephen. Tasha, did you still have a question to ask? Or did you have something else?
I sent Marty an email.
Okay, terrific. Okay. Well, that was fantastic. Caleb, it is so nice to have you here, I have to say. So I hope you can stay with us, and we'll go ahead and we'll transition over to hearing from Hannah Sloan.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate being here. I appreciate you having me here. I have another conflict. I had 3 meetings come up at the same time, so I do have to skip off to something else. But I appreciate it very much, and I will happily come back to the next meeting. We can discuss further, or we can discuss in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was great. Okay, let's transition then. So we're going to hear about a pilot program they're doing in the jail right now. And Hannah Sloan, are you ready to share that with us?
I am. Let's see if this works.
So Hannah Sloan, one of our co-chairs, one of the members here of the J-POP, and also somebody who's in the field. That's great.
When I do this, can you guys see my notes or just the slide?
And Hannah, could you introduce yourself one more
Yeah.
time?
Just the slide, Hannah. It looks really
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, yeah. So Hannah Sloan, I am one of the clinical program directors with Lifeline Connections, and I oversee a couple of our outpatient programs as well as our behavioral health and reentry services program at the Whatcom County Jail and Juvenile Detention. So here I have a little bit of a presentation of an overview of our Making Changes pilot program. It is from our Lifeline Connections BHRS program, and it ran from October to November of 2024. So the brief overview of the program and our goals is, hold on. Go back to where I was, minimize you guys. Okay. So our program is a voluntary therapeutic community and group therapy program intended to educate and rehabilitate incarcerated adults. And the program offers a structured environment of learning to help participants affect positive changes in their attitudes and behaviors. Skills learned in this program enable participants to make choices associated with a more healthy, positive, and recovery-oriented lifestyle free of crime. The program also aims to improve participants' functioning in several domains of life and prepare them to successfully re-enter the community, thereby ultimately reducing recidivism. The program can be broken down into two components, really, which is the therapeutic environment, the sort of setting for the program, and that is the physical space and the privileges that are provided to individuals not accessible to other inmates, so such as art supplies, yoga mats, books within the unit itself that they can use throughout the day. And this environment requires participants to work together to maintain a positive, supportive, and healthy community within their own pod so that they can foster an environment of hope, respect, accountability, and recovery amongst themselves. And then the second component is what we are calling the programming component, and that is our group and individual therapy sessions where individuals learn and practice skills to better manage their symptoms and modify behavior so they're better prepared to re-enter the community. And then we try and reinforce that in the therapeutic environment so they practice those skills with each other and hold each other accountable to actually make changes that are going to be lasting. Okay, so the inspiration for this program came from conversations with Chief Erickson back when he was still lieutenant and preparing for this new journey he's on back in 2023, and his vision for corrections to move toward a more rehabilitative and collaborative approach to corrections and inmate care, and an overall desire for increased programming and therapeutic interventions beyond just the crisis response and brief psychiatric medication that we provide currently. And we all just kind of had this collective desire to expand those services so we can be more proactive and preventative instead of responsive to the inmates and their needs, and hopefully reduce recidivism and lead to better therapeutic outcomes for the incarcerated individuals. Our program design and structure was based on some site visits to Davidson County and Franklin County, like Caleb talked about earlier, as well as a program called the Ready for Change program in Alexandria, Virginia, which is a little bit more substance use focused and focused specifically on the stages of change, but we were able to utilize the structure a little bit. One sec, let me mute my Teams. Okay. And what was really inspirational, obviously the Behavioral Care Center was phenomenal to see in Nashville, but then Franklin County and Columbus, their Better Neighbors therapeutic community was wonderful. As Caleb mentioned, they had like 20 to 30 men with severe charges all living together, and it was really a peer-led program with the addition of some social services provided by staff and other community partners. They had their social services programs really robust. They have about 60 plus group options available to individuals. They have 3 to 5 staff-led groups per day from their social services program, and then other group offerings run by peers, so the inmates themselves, or volunteers from community partner agencies, so that they can really supplement the programming offered in-house. Program development started in 2023, way back in the beginning of 2023, with discussions and some of those desires from Chief Erickson and research that our team did to see what kind of programs are out there in jail settings throughout the county or throughout the country and prison specifically. There aren't many jail programs, which is why it was so exciting to be able to go to Nashville and to Columbus to see what they are currently doing. 2024, upon our return from Columbus and seeing that facility and their programming, that's when our program development really started. And my team was super excited, super motivated. So we scheduled some weekly, bi-weekly workshops to work through the eligibility criteria that we wanted for this program, our screening process, program length, curriculum, and some data collection that we wanted to see. And then we, this past year, worked really closely with corrections, coordinated with them on the physical space, the classifications and security concerns that come with running a program like this, and just the overall implementation of this program. The physical space, they were wonderful. Corrections, the sheriff's office and the county was great at making that physical space really nice. I have a picture at the end of it, at the end of this presentation, with some new furniture and a different layout in the unit to kind of be more welcoming and inviting and introduce some nature and a little bit of the biophilic design that Caleb was talking about. Some fresh paint, so it's not completely sterile and dungeon-like. And then they helped modify the multi-purpose room at the work center so we could use that for our groups and activities. So the program structure was designed for a group of 6 men to be housed together at the work center, and we created 4 group sessions per week over 6 weeks, 2 mental health sessions, 1 reentry, and 1 peer-led session every week, each session being about 2 hours long. In addition, we had 1 individual session per week with each individual lasting about 30 to 60 minutes to debrief about what was discussed in group, what they didn't feel comfortable sharing in a group setting, and any other individual concerns that they might have had. Sessions were facilitated by 2 BHRS staff at all times, and the primary staff involved in facilitating those sessions were our 1 mental health clinician, 1 reentry specialist, and 1 peer specialist. And then we had some other staff hop in and join as well as providing a lot of support and program development on the back end as well.
Hannah, what's BHRS?
Sorry?
What is BHRS? What does
Oh
that
yeah,
mean?
reminder, that's Behavioral Health Reentry Services program.
Good.
That's our program for the jail.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then here we have a list of our curriculum throughout the 6 weeks of programming. And every week, in addition to these topics, also included the peer-led discussion that reflected on the materials and skills learned throughout the week. So week 1 was really about introduction, settling in and building rapport with each other as a group, and then with our clinicians as well. They talked about what is reentry in general and started discussing individual histories and identities and what each participant wanted to work on. Week 2, they focused on emotional literacy, financial literacy, and self-awareness. Week 3, building healthy relationships, communication skills, conflict resolution. That was a really heated week and thought there were going to be some difficulties, but the group was really wonderful and worked through it as a team, as a group with just minimal direction from clinical staff. So that was really awesome to see them work through things in a healthy way. Week 4 and week 5 was all about acknowledging their traumas and their histories, learning about nervous system responses, internal family systems, and how they each got there to this point in their life, and then helped them learn some new skills, foster resilience, and practice self-regulation so that they can better cope with their trauma now that they understand kind of where their symptoms are coming from and what they want to do better moving forward. We also did an employment workshop during week 5 to really focus on the reentry aspect of care. Week 6 was kind of a wrap up and talking about their plan for leaving jail and what their reentry plan looks like. So how they need to create a positive support network, learning about community resources, and reflecting on what they've learned and how they're going to utilize it outside of custody. We also had a celebration with everyone. Sheriff Tanksley was there, Chief Erickson, Sergeant Freeman, Lieutenant Lovell, and then our BHRS program staff were there to congratulate the guys and thank them for their participation so we can hopefully continue to do this moving forward. So a little bit about the participant selection. We have our eligibility criteria here. Mental health diagnosis. Most of them had a major depression diagnosis and or bipolar or schizophrenia. So getting into that severe mental illness category of diagnosis. They all had to be psychiatrically stable. They had to be in custody for the next couple of months so we could make sure they continued throughout the whole program. And then expressing a desire to change and being willing to participate in group discussions, live with a group of like-minded and recovery-oriented individuals, which was huge because we had a couple participants who came from isolation, 23-in-1 setting, and they were really nervous about living with other guys that they didn't know. And then they had to be able and willing to follow the therapeutic and safety guidelines set by our staff and the jail staff. The application process, they all received a packet with open-ended questions and a bunch of questionnaires and rating scales to help us evaluate their readiness for change, symptom severity, and their ability to participate in a group setting. Some of the quantitative measures that we utilized, we provided self-report measures and questionnaires at the screening phase and after the program ended to see their progress. The University of Rhode Island Change Assessment, the Eureka psychotherapy version, we utilized to measure stages of change, which is pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, and maintenance. The group selection questionnaire we utilized to assess for group therapy readiness and determine their fit for group therapy. So what are their expectations for group therapy? What are some positive and negative interpersonal characteristics that might impact their ability to engage in a group setting? So their ability to interact well with others, any deviancy, concerns, difficulty establishing rapport, or overpowering others in a group dynamic. Then we had the generalized anxiety disorder screening, the GAD-7, which is a brief measure for anxiety and the severity of anxiety symptoms, as well as the patient health questionnaire, the PHQ-9, which is also known as the patient depression questionnaire, which is used for screening, monitoring, and measuring the severity of depression instead of anxiety. Here we have some outcomes for our anxiety scores. So for the GAD-7, we saw that 3 of our 5 participants, and I don't know that I said this, we started out with 6 participants and we unfortunately had to remove one of them from the group for interpersonal concerns. So we ended up with 5, but those individuals completed the entirety of the program. So 3 of our 5 participants had a significant decrease in their total score for anxiety, seeing a reduction of 14 points each, going from a rating of severe anxiety with a score over 15 before the program to a rating of mild or even minimal anxiety after completion of the program. And that's a pretty significant change, especially in a 6-week time period. One individual saw a smaller decrease, but their rating still went from moderate anxiety to mild anxiety. And one individual saw a slight increase in his score, but that was within 2 points of his pre-program score and could be explained by a variety of factors and just general fluctuations in scoring. Here is the similar outcome for the PHQ-9, so depression severity, and again, we saw the same 3 clients had a significant decrease in their total score between 11 and 17 points, reduction from prior to the program to after the program ended, going from a moderately severe or severe rating of depression to a minimal rating or moderate, which again is really significant considering the time period of just 6 weeks. One client saw no change in his score, and the other saw a slight change, just a decrease of 1 point, pretty minimal. Then here we have some participant feedback, some quotes that we gathered when we provided the same open-ended questions after program ended. And the general consensus was that people really enjoyed the program and would do it again in a heartbeat. They felt like they are now better able to understand their diagnosis and have the tools they need to work through any symptoms or issues that they have. They want to continue treatment in custody and outside of custody. They want to go to inpatient substance use treatment, even if it's not part of their sentencing, which is huge. And they want to continue with outpatient mental health therapy with Lifeline specifically, which really shows how much of a connection our clinicians were able to make with them in just a few weeks. And then there was this sense of belonging and community that they were able to build. So one said, I've gotten close with my peers. We're like a family now. I feel like I got a new safety net since being here. We can go far in life. And then wanting to give back to the community. There was one else. But there, it just was really positive and really awesome to see all of their feedback here. Looking to the future, we're hoping to run another session with a different population, hopefully starting in March. If we're able to do it with a group of women, that's probably what we will do. But if we're not able to, we'll hopefully get a different group of the male population to see if this is replicable to, say, a group of sex offenders, since they have to be separate from the general population. We want to make sure that treatment's accessible to everyone, or potentially do something tailored toward psychosis or other psychiatric presentations. We look forward to continuing to build relationships with community partners so we can hopefully supplement the programming that we offer with some volunteers providing groups and classes to really keep individuals engaged and busy throughout the day and throughout the week. And then the hope for this is that we're able to provide these groups and individual therapy long term, which is something that has never been done at the jail. And this is a first of its kind program in Washington State, and we're hoping to expand it to serve more of the population, add more therapeutic pods, or expand into some of the larger pods at the work center. And then just add more group options so that we can continue to serve more of the population and not just 6 to 8 individuals at a time. We're really grateful for the opportunity and want to give a huge thanks to our partners at the jail, the corrections, and sheriff's office. We couldn't have done it without their support and advocacy and desire to see this program actually happen at the jail. So big thanks to them. And then here's a picture of the mural that they got installed, as well as some of the new furniture, which is they're able to move it and get some extra room as they change the layout in the unit. It was a little bit more cramped previously, and now it's just a more welcoming space. Got some blue paint in there, so it's not as sterile. And again, the beautiful mural that we got donated thanks to Sergeant Freeman and other jail staff's hard work. And they're working on another one for another unit at the work center. All right. That's it.
Thank you, Hannah. That was awesome. Okay, let's take a few minutes for any questions or comments for Hannah and this great program. Yeah, go ahead, Miriam.
In the eligibility, one of them, well, many of them were like able and willing. How do you define able?
That's a great question. It was, so what we did, we had the application packet, and then if we screened them as potentially being a good fit, we had interviews with some of the individuals as well to see what their psychiatric presentation was, and if they are able to actually, sit down for a 2-hour session and engage with others. Some of the screening, the scales that I talked about have questions related to whether or not they can actively engage in a group setting. So that helped. And then just our mental health counselors doing some of their own assessments and knowing the individual since they're from their interactions with them to see if they were a good fit and if they would be a good match with each other, so that we had a good group dynamic going.
Did that answer your question, Miriam?
Yes.
Okay, Rob?
Thanks for the presentation. I was just curious, in the future, would person only be in the program for 6 weeks and then go back to a different housing unit, or would they stay until they were released?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something that we're continuing to work on, and it'll evolve over time. What we saw in Columbus was it was a program that they could come into and be in for years until they go to prison or release. So that's kind of what we're hoping for. And that's why I like to separate it into these two components of like the therapeutic community. And that's kind of just ongoing, and then the therapeutic programming options that that could change depending on an individual's needs and where they're at in their stages of change. So yeah, that would be the hope. We are, since concluding, we're continuing to do one group session a week to make sure that those individuals still have some support and are able to maintain the skills that they learned throughout the sessions.
Great, thanks.
Awesome presentation, Hannah. I really appreciated it. And I was writing questions and you were answering them as you got to your next slide. So thank you for how thorough you were. And just in the future, have you thought about the other services that are outside the community and bringing them in as part of these group sessions to start building relationships? I just think this is a great start for when you have them in a space like that, you can start building those relationships for.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what our hopefully our focus is for especially the next session, and as we try and figure out how much we could potentially expand this, we're gonna as some of our clinical staff and administrative staff, as well as some of the jail staff, Sergeant Freeman especially, is really passionate about this and has a lot of energy that he wants to put toward finding some community partners that will come in and teach classes or just talk about their their experiences and what options they have for services in the community. We've talked with the public defender's office, potentially having them come in for a presentation to talk about legal challenges and legal options that are out there, having mental health court come and talk. We had discussions with Judge Anderson about mental health court and how this could potentially work with that long term, and some other diversion program options. And then getting Northwest Youth Services in. I talked with some people there in a meeting last week about this program. So if anybody has ideas, or if you want to come in and talk and do a class and volunteer your time, that would be wonderful. Please reach out if that's something you're interested, or if you know anyone.
Great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments for Hannah? Yeah, Stark.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend one of those sessions out there, and I was very impressed by it. And you're right, Sergeant Freeman is passionate about it, and it made me remember from the trip to Columbus how interested he was in certain aspects of that facility. And I can specifically remember him saying, "This is a game changer" several times. Um, so he's a real asset to the jail. But I would also say that the session that I attended was in, I think, what was originally meant to be a library at the work center, and it had been converted into a courtroom during the pandemic. Although it wasn't terrible, it is illustrative of how lacking our current facility is for behavioral health purposes. And I think really should open people's eyes to what sort of uh, bricks and mortar we need in the new facility to initiate programs like these, and AA or NA or whatever else we see fit to put in. There really needs to be a lot of thought put into the facilities themselves to allow for this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a big reason why we had it at the work center was because there's not really any space at the main jail. And so we had to talk about moving people from the main jail to the work center because we had the space there, some privacy, and that multi-purpose room, which they had as a courtroom for a little while. And luckily we were able to utilize that for our sessions, but we couldn't have done something like that at the main jail.
Thanks. Okay.
Jared.
Yeah, I just want to second what Stark said, because as we continue to do these programs, even the space at the work center is very small. Mm-hmm. And certainly we did our best with what we have. But going forward, as we look towards the new jail, it's important that we have not only the support from the community, but the support from you all, to advocate for the space that we need for different programming. And certainly we won't be able to just say, okay, we have a multi-use room and we use that for everything. So we certainly need your help to advocate for that.
Great. Wonderful. Amber.
Hi, I guess I kind of had a question, and I'm hearing like you were talking about other providers, when you're talking about other resources coming in, and I hear, Hannah, like you are with Lifeline, but there are a lot of other like mental health providers in the community. And what I guess I'm just curious, like, is it Lifeline only, or like is there opportunity for like Unity Care and Clarity and like I work at CCS, so obviously all of these are different resources in the community. Are there opportunity for those to get involved as well, or is it contracted with Lifeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think The reason we were able to do this is because we hold the contract for the behavioral health services in the jail right now. And so we don't have to worry about billing insurance and getting reimbursement that way. But if there are other providers that want to come in and have the ability to do that with the understanding that you wouldn't necessarily get reimbursed until we have that reentry waiver, hopefully soon, then absolutely we want as many people to come in as possible. We have a good partnership with Lake Whatcom Center because they have their heart program, which is funding through SAMHSA, so they don't have to worry about billing Medicaid for the services that they provide, so they can see individuals that are in custody. So anybody that wants to do that, please do it. And let's see how we can be creative to make that happen.
Great, thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments at this point? Okay. Well, that was a lot of information, and I'm sure we're all going to be noodling on it. And to the degree we have some time today for folks to just share any other reflections, we'll do that. But we do have one more thing to do today. So why don't we transition over, and we want to talk about these focus groups. So one of the things that Caleb is interested in, which really aligns with the JPOP's goals and the IPRTF's goals, is to gather input from people who are affected by these changes directly. So people with lived experience in the jail, for example. So this is what we'd like to do is just share a little bit about the focus group project that Caleb and David Goldman, who was here earlier, and Marty and I have been talking about, and get any input you have. This was in your packets, so hopefully you got a chance to look at it. So Marty, do you want to tee us up?
Yeah, and Hannah Fisk as well has been
Hannah, right.
chiming in on these conversations. So yeah, Caleb put forward this idea and request with David Goldman, the jail educator. We had done a series of we had done two studies before during the needs assessment process and implementation planning process, where we did surveys of inmates and of jail staff, and a little bit of focus group to test stuff out before that. And so Caleb went to David and said, let's do some more. David went to us and said, let's mock something up. So we developed this plan together that is that was in your packets. And just real quickly, we're thinking 2 to 3 focus groups with 6 to 9 people in each. The inmates would be, people would have the opportunity to apply to participate and be selected. Each group would last about 90 minutes. So 2 to 3 small groups. 90 minutes, we would, before the group, send them the video that we sent to you that's about Franklin County's facility. So just try to get their, be a little inspired by that. And we would also send them the focus group questions ahead of time so they could start thinking about how they, what ideas they have that they might like to express in the conversation. We would then have the groups and use their responses to share with the design team, the folks working on jail and behavioral care center design, and also to inform a written survey that would be given on tablets to all inmates. Anybody who's in the jail who wanted to fill it out would have that opportunity. So that's the idea. So you've seen the draft questions, and there are 7 of them. It probably is too much for a 60 to 90 minute session, but this is what we have right now. And I think we're not going to read through these given where we are with the time today. So I just want to say this is in your packets, and here are the 7 questions. And mostly we want to just have an open discussion here about what information you all think would be most useful to gather from inmates for the jail design process. And if you've had a chance to look through the questions, any feedback you have on the questions. So let's open it up. We have about 10 minutes for discussion.
And Marty, you can go ahead and take down the slide.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? What should we be asking folks? Yeah, go ahead, Miriam.
Hey, so I had some thoughts around the question. So should I just like say everything and then we go through each one, or one at a time?
Just you've got the floor.
Okay.
Go for it.
So question 6. I was wondering if we could rephrase it.
You want us to pop it up back on the screen? Would that help?
No, I have it here, but yeah, if it helps for other folks too.
Yeah.
So it's, are there services that can be offered in the jail that would help you transition to life once you are no longer incarcerated? I was wondering if it could rephrase the help you transition to life once you are no longer incarcerated. It sounded weird to me.
Yeah. And then do you have a different way of framing it? Did I hear you say?
That would help you with reentry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if reentry is such a technical term that we might need to have a more accessible term, but yeah.
Yeah, I catch where you went with that. Transition to life. Yeah, it is weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds, yeah. And then
Tasha, can you mute, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
I was wondering, okay, so in terms of input for, and I know that we have 7 questions, we probably don't need more. And I wanted to know, what if we asked them what questions do you think we should be asking about the facilities and services in a new jail? And who else do you think we should gather input from?
Nice. Yeah.
And then I was also going to note that there's a lot of questions around design and not a huge emphasis on services and programs. And I feel like the services we decide on will probably affect the design versus at least I would rather it be that way versus the other way around, where we just have a facility and we're like, I guess this one can be used for this thing. So that's kind of, yeah. I think that's all I got. Oh, no, I have one more about demographics. So who are the inmates who will be interviewed, and are they representative of the actual demographic population in our jail systems? Okay, that's all.
I'll take a stab at that one and just say that given that these will be just 2 or 3 small groups with a handful of people each, we will need to collect some info on them and try and get representative groups from among the people who express a desire to participate. And then with the survey, there will be a demographic section where we find out how they categorize themselves on various demographics.
Great.
Thank you for that great input.
That's awesome. Other feedback on the questions or things you all think would be good to know? Yeah, start. Start? Oh, you're on mute.
I think question number 3 should be broken down to provide the inmates some specifics. For instance, when we were in Columbus, there was a great debate about whether individual pods should be 2, 4, 6, 8 inmates in a particular section, and you know there's obviously good and thoughtful jail reasons for different types of design, but I would be interested in hearing from a safety standpoint, you know, how inmates feel about being in a room overnight with 2 people versus 10 people. You know, and you also have things like having to use the bathroom in front of other people and those sorts of things. I'm just wondering if we could make three have some categories like housing, dining, you know, whatever, to sort of get the inmates thinking about ways that their feelings of safety could be increased instead of just a generalized question.
Nice, thank you. Julia?
Yeah, this may be premature in the process, but I'll throw it out there. Do we have plans after the survey and the focus group discussions are conducted to share the results back with the participants? It's something that we always try and do whenever we collect information from folks, is to make sure that they're looped into, okay, what is becoming of this? How is it being used? And to demonstrate that we've heard you and we value your inputs, and we haven't just like taken info from you and then we got what we needed. So now you're not kind of informed with how it's being used. So just wanted to throw that out there. If it hasn't been thought of, something I would encourage.
Great point.
That's a
Thank you.
lovely idea.
Amber?
Also, I just kind of want to talk about number 3 as well. You know, I think that just coming from a perspective of somebody who has been in jail, in the moment, I may not be, have ways to increase the safety, but I could come up with a bunch of ways that I have felt unsafe in the jail. And so that may also be a way, of having that discussion and getting actual feedback, is, you know, what ways are you currently feeling unsafe, or have you felt unsafe in our current design? Yeah.
That's a great suggestion. Seems like such an easier way to answer the question. And then, yeah, you could move into what would some solutions be. Yeah, thank you. Hannah?
Yeah, adding to what Amber said, having, you know, maybe some suggestions, some options for what could be implemented with kind of what we've seen at other facilities. And, you know, would this help you feel safer, given that this has made you feel unsafe in the past?
Yeah. Great. Okay, what else? What else, y'all? Hannah Fisk, do you want to add anything in about your thinking on this process so far?
Work on the focus group questions particularly. So I think that this is all really great feedback, and yeah, I think this is going to make it a lot more well-rounded.
Thanks. Yeah, Hannah's been working more on starting to put the survey tool together, and is brilliant. So we're really lucky to have her help. Okay, what are other thoughts on this? What you think would be helpful to ask the detainees? Okay. Well, let's bear in mind too that our hope at some point in the spring, I'm guessing it's going to be later in the spring, is also to be coordinating with the owner's rep. So again, that's the design, you know, group who's going to be working on the jail and behavioral care center design, to do some more public forums, and even for our group to be able to spend more time just thinking and talking about the design. So just to let you know that this is a big topic right now for all of us to think about, making sure that we design this well, and both with what the facility looks like, but also the services. So this is just, you know, we got it started, right? Here we are. Yeah, Pamela.
Yeah, just a thought that occurred to me is wondering if I don't know the format of this focus group and the questions, but I would hope that the inmates get to see these questions a day. There's some time between asking them to answer them and then having them be exposed to this information. Like they view it one day, they view these videos, and then have maybe the next day, so they have the list of questions and some time to reflect and put thoughtful responses, because I know it would take me some time to come up with thoughtful responses to these questions.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Thanks.
Anything else at this point? Okay, that was really, yeah, thank you all for that. Those tidbits, really helpful. Okay, Marty, let's go ahead and wind her up.
Yeah,
So,
I think where we are right now is public comment. Right on time.
don't we
Yeah.
have the next meeting to talk about that?
Yeah,
no?
I think I already talked about it at the beginning, but I can kind of just go back and say that we are gonna see what happens with the owner's rep and contract and decide over the course of the next 2 weeks whether these topics, whether we'll pick up the jail inmate survey or focus groups and survey at the next meeting or hold off a little bit. And we will be definitely focusing on the implementation plan projects, updates, and performance measurement plan. Stark, did you want to add something here?
I was just going to make a request that can somebody send around a list of email addresses for the people who are on this committee?
We've been asked not to do that.
Oh,
And that's why all the emails are BCC'd and I don't know why, but everybody's names are on the, all the members' names are on the website. It has to do with public records, but I need to ask Jill more about why we are not supposed to do that, but we've been asked not to. Sorry.
okay.
Okay. So, oops. Well, it said public comment on that next slide because we want to open it up and we have quite a few people here today who are not official JPOP committee members. And this is the chance for you to chime in if you have something to say that you haven't already.
Are you paying a bill? No, I'm letting you know how much my income is so they can take all.
All right. Well, wonderful. That was an excellent session. I just want to also appreciate that we've got Dean here from County Health and Human Services, and also Julia's here from Village Reach, and they're going to be so our main our star performers next month to really get started on this evaluation plan. So we've been waiting for this for a long time. So it's going to be great that it's finally going to happen. We're going to get to talk about it. So very excited. I also want to thank our co-chairs for they helped design this agenda today, and along with our protege, Richard Gleason, who couldn't be here today, but just having their brains on how to think about the J-pop and make sure that this time is really valuable has just been really a blessing. So, and thanks to all of you who showed up today. That was really, really a great session. Really appreciate your time. And we're getting out a little early, so that's always nice.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.